Some of the most harrowing images coming out of Gaza were filmed by this freelance journalist, Mariam Dagga. Not anymore. She was with 4 other journalists. Some of them snapped this selfie just hours before the attack. One of them was even live streaming the scene for the news agency Reuters. Cameraman Husam al-Masri was killed, along with Mohammad Salama, who worked for Al Jazeera and Middle East Eye, and his colleague Ahmed Abu Aziz. The attack was a double-tap strike, with one missile hitting first, and then you see another moments later as rescue crews arrive. Mariam would often base herself at the hospital in Khan Younis, shooting images like these of the war's youngest victims. The 33-year-old could have left. She sent her son abroad to safety to stay with relatives, but chose to remain and document the destruction. With almost 200 journalists now killed in Gaza, her sister said she knew she would suffer the same fate as her colleagues and friends.
Yesterday she called me and said, "Hey sister, I would like to have coffee with you." She was saying goodbye to us. I went to her and stayed up late. I usually go to her every day. Yesterday we laughed a lot and she started showing us memories. She said, "When I die and when I am martyred," I responded, "Who will you leave us for?" And then she said, "There is nothing left. It's done. Today or tomorrow, I will be martyred."
Her story is a snapshot of the suffering in Gaza. Her mother, unable to get proper treatment, died from cancer 4 months ago. She had given a kidney to her father, and now her son is an orphan. At the White House, it appeared that a journalist broke the news to President Trump. This was his reaction.
In Gaza that killed 20 people, including 5 journalists.
When did this happen?
This happened overnight, today.
I didn't know that. No.
Any reaction to this? Are you
Well,
going
I'm
to
not
talk to
happy
the Prime
about it.
Minister?
I don't want to see it. At the same time, we have to end that whole nightmare. I'm the one that got the hostages out. I got them out.
And in yet another sign that perhaps only Trump can influence the actions of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, an hour later he shared this post on social media, claiming the hospital strike was a tragic mishap, saying Israel values the work of journalists, medical staff and all civilians, and that the military authorities are conducting a thorough investigation. International journalists aren't allowed to independently film inside Gaza because Israel refuses to allow it. Today, on the streets of Tel Aviv, there is little mention of the deaths in Gaza. Israelis are once again calling on President Trump to bring home the remaining hostages. Families of those being held in Gaza and their supporters staged nationwide protests.
I expect the Israeli government to immediately accept the deal that's on the table and to start returning our hostages that are dying there in Gaza, and to end the disaster that's going on in Gaza, to end this war immediately. And I expect President Trump to do all in his power to bring our people back home like he did until now. He has to end this tragedy.
Citing no evidence, Trump has said in the next 2 to 3 weeks there's going to be a pretty conclusive ending to the conflict. Everyone here wants to believe it. But as Israelis block highways, their military's tanks are moving closer to the border ahead of a fresh offensive on Gaza City, where airstrikes continued, killing dozens overnight. Amjad Rashid said her neighbour's house was hit while they were sleeping. She says she doesn't know how to talk, what to say or what to do. She has simply run out of words. We're now joined by Oren Persico from the Israeli media watchdog, The Seventh Eye. I wanted to start by asking you, how are the killings of journalists in Gaza covered in the Israeli media?
Well, the Israeli media focuses more not on the killing of journalists, but on how what's going on in Gaza will reflect on Israeli image abroad and might harden the pressure to force Israel to stop the war. The facts on the ground come in only later, if at all. The focus is, this doesn't look good, and what can we do to make sure that the Israeli narrative is spread more effectively abroad?
And what about the language that we see in Israeli media? We know that the Israeli military often call these media workers terrorists. Is that then echoed on Israeli media channels as well?
Well, it's not a clear cut. You have the far-right Israeli media. Just yesterday, the chief commentator there called to eliminate all journalists in Gaza, which is insane, of course. But then you have mainstream media, and then they do make the difference between former Al Jazeera workers who are considered terrorists by the IDF and are called terrorists by the Israeli media, and those specific freelance journalists from yesterday who work for international respected agencies, and it was reported that they were not considered terrorists and were not targeted. That's the official line.
That these journalists were not targeted, that this was what Netanyahu is calling a tragic mishap.
Exactly. The Israeli media follows step by step with IDF spokesperson narrative. If the IDF spokesperson say, look, we have evidence these are terrorists, the Israeli media won't bother to make checks or independent inquiries. They'll go with that. If the IDF spokesperson and Netanyahu say this was a mishap or sorry, it wasn't the aim of the attack, the media will go along with that as well.
So would you say there's a lot of self-censorship when it comes to reporting the war in Gaza inside Israel?
Oh, absolutely. I think most of the censorship regarding this war is self-censorship. You know, we have a military censorship in Israel that forces all journalists to get a clearance before they publish anything which could be sensitive for the national security. But the most of the censorship in Israel is self-censorship, and not just because journalists think they might get a backlash from the public. I think a lot of Israeli journalists don't think they should publish material about what's going on in Gaza. Their own opinion is we should support the war effort and not really be journalists.
What are Israelis seeing on the mainstream news channels in Israel from Gaza these days? Are they seeing pictures of starvation? Are they seeing pictures of the endless suffering of civilians?
The focus is not the suffering. Again, the focus is the narrative war between the Hamas propaganda campaign about the suffering in Gaza. Of course, in every war, you have some people going to get hurt, some other people will be hungry, that's usual. But the Hamas, according to Israeli media, amplifies that and turns it into another part of the terror propaganda, right? And there's a sort of a narrative conflict between Hamas and Israel narrative that says we're letting a lot of humanitarian aid coming in, and you do see, pictures of like a sack of potatoes that nobody wanted on the side of the street. How can there be hunger if you see one single sack of potatoes, you don't know exactly where in the Gaza Strip, that nobody has bothered to pick up? So the cracks in the narrative of no hunger at all are there because the pictures, it's hard to deny them. But Israeli media tends to focus on separate incidents, sort of, either lies or exaggerations. The Israeli media focuses on that in order not to really report about the tens of thousands of people in severe malnutrition situation.
And how much do Israelis follow local media channels? And how much does what Israelis see in the media then reflect public opinion on the streets?
They follow it very much. I mean, everyone can open the cell phone and get Channel 4 or the New York Times or whatever. The self-censorship is not only from the journalists, it's also from the public. The public does not want to know and does not bother to get out of this dome of ignorance that the Israeli media has created. The Israeli public opinion is very much shaped by the Israeli media, and I would say the Israeli media holds a lot of responsibility to the fact that most Israelis don't care about what's going on to the Palestinians living in Gaza.
We know that there are lots of people out on the streets today. The families representing the hostages are calling for this day of action to end the war. Are we seeing a lot more people out on the streets than we were a few months ago? Is this public opinion shifting on the streets, do you think?
Well, the demonstrations have become larger in recent weeks. They were already as large as they are today at the beginning of the war and several months after that. I'm not sure that it is a demonstration of a major shift of opinion. The Israeli anti-Netanyahu camp very much wants to see this government ending and replaced by a different government, very much wants to see the hostages back. But it doesn't mean that this same anti-Netanyahu camp is out in the streets for humanitarian reasons, because they are worried about what's going on in Gaza to the Palestinians. They are more worried, like you said, about the hostages, and Netanyahu himself attracts a lot of hostility. Opinion polls still show that a majority of Israeli citizens, Jewish Israeli citizens, don't care about what's going on in Gaza and don't think that Israel should provide more humanitarian aid.
Thanks so much, Oren Posako, for joining us.
Thank you.